Your favorite author was a conservative. And to all my Cormac McCarthy fans out there, I know this may be hard to hear for some of you guys, but it is a fact that Cormac McCarthy was a conservative. And in this video today, I'm going to be providing direct quotes from McCarthy, analyzing different aspects of his biography and lifestyle, and then pulling moments from some of his novels to show you guys that McCarthy was a conservative. And no, Cormac McCarthy wasn't a Donald Trump-loving, lifetime NRA member, goes to church on Sunday type conservative. But he was a conservative that thought Donald Trump would complete the system of German idealism.
Trump is going to complete the system. Hegel couldn't do it. Schelling couldn't do it. Fichte couldn't do it.
Do you think Trump
Reinhold couldn't do it. Maman couldn't do it. No one could complete the system of German idealism.
All jokes aside, I am apolitical, everyone, so I want to drive us through this political analysis without any bias. And so I'm going to pull up our first direct quote. And our first quote of the day comes from a 2005 interview with McCarthy in Vanity Fair. And it starts, quote, "He likes to complain about Santa Fe, a theme park, and the people who have gathered here from the coast. If you don't agree with them politically, you can't just agree to disagree. They think you are crazy," he exclaims. He talks of moving back to Texas, where Jennifer's parents can help with child raising in a more congenial city. And Winkley was his third wife. So who is McCarthy talking about here? He is obviously talking about liberals. In 2004, 77% of Santa Fe County voted for John Kerry. A very similar number voted for Joe Biden at the same rate in the 2020 election. And if you guys have never been to Santa Fe, it's very artsy and woo and very beautiful. I love it there. But McCarthy didn't move to Santa Fe to study the desert from a New Mexican point of view or to find the secret energetic portals up by Taos. He moved there because the Santa Fe Institute was there, and that is the only reason. In his 2017 interview, he said that he had been trying to convince them to move the Institute to Texas since he first got there, because he doesn't like the people in Santa Fe. And what McCarthy is describing when he says you can't agree to disagree is the small inception of cancel culture. And we are talking about 2005 liberals here, who by 2023's estimation were all writers. A lot of liberals in 2005 were anti-gay marriage. Some were pro-war, war on terror. But they couldn't agree with McCarthy because they were from totally different places. He said that they gathered from the coast, which is referring to the very liberal Northeast and the West Coast, to live in an artsy mountain town, Santa Fe. And for anyone who lives in Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, you guys saw this over the last 3 or 4 years since the lockdowns happened, with people from both coasts flooding your town. And McCarthy wants to move back to a more congenial city where Jennifer's parents are from, which is a rural area outside of El Paso, which is as about conservative as you can get. And if we look at some biographical elements, McCarthy was raised Catholic in the 1940s in Knoxville, Tennessee. Southwest of Knoxville, Tennessee, actually. And interestingly, McCarthy rejected a lot of the collective elements of Catholicism and moved toward a more individualistic approach to life. He had very isolated hobbies. He once said that he had every hobby that one could have. And he was very into hunting, fishing, hiking, all things that breed independence. And then as we move into his college career, he also was very independent. He felt like the university, his creative writing professors, and other students had nothing to teach him. And he was right, because at the age of 29, he released The Orchard Keeper, and it was as good as any one of his professors or fellow compatriots at university were writing, times like 100. And so McCarthy rejects this very bourgeoisie attitude that his family had. His father was a lawyer. His brother became a lawyer who was apparently very hardcore about money. His two sisters went to universities in the Northeast. And what does McCarthy do? He becomes not just a writer. He moves out to his own, he starts renovating a barn. He loves to play country and hillbilly music. Yet he starts to develop what we would maybe call today a more libertarian philosophy, because there are some things that McCarthy is pretty liberal on. For instance, he cares about the environment a lot, but from a very weird angle, because Charles McCarthy, his father, was an attorney for the Tennessee Valley Authority, and he handled the eminent domain claims to remove people off of their property because of dams, the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and all of these things. So McCarthy was very split, like I'm sure a lot of us are, in terms of environmentalism, because he obviously saw that the anarchy in terms of hunting and stuff, led to the destruction of bears and wolves, and he wanted to eventually reintroduce them with Edward Abbey to the American Southwest. But he also saw that what conservation does, it actually rips a lot of people off of their land. Because what if thousands of families had been living on multi-generational plots and you want to build a national park there? So our next quote is just as important, and it shows McCarthy's hatred of progressivism. And this is from his 1992 interview with Rick Wallach. Quote, "There's no such thing as a life without bloodshed," McCarthy says philosophically. "I think the notion that the species can be improved in some way, everyone could live in harmony, is a really dangerous idea. Those who are afflicted with this notion are the first ones to give up their souls, their freedom. Your desire that it be that way will enslave you and make your life vacuous." This is a very Platonic idea that Plato said that those who seek freedom the most become the most enslaved, people and nation states. And progressivism is another word for utopianism. McCarthy rejects that we can live kumbaya with each other and build a better world. Basically, that is never going to happen. And so McCarthy isn't advocating for anarchy here, though, because in The Road, he shows us what anarchy creates. Rather, he is advocating for seemingly a minimal government standard, which makes total sense because the whole Santa Fe Institute, which he felt very loyal and drawn to, was a scientific libertarian institute. Eric Baker wrote a very good paper called The Rise of the Santa Fe Libertarian, where he goes on for like 30-something pages tracking how the core philosophy of the Santa Fe Institute was one of libertarianism, and that's why they brought in a lot of big donors like Jeff Epstein, helped fuel the project. They had this idea that kind of coincided with their studying of complex systems, that you could create a more harmonious world through freedom and more scientific and better scientific research through freedom, because places like Harvard and whatnot are very politically biased, and they're driven sometimes into corrupt studies and whatnot because they are trying to force a scientific outcome, whether it be for science or for politics, money, whatever. And so kind of looping back to McCarthy's novels, a lot of them are anti-progressive. I would say at least 8 of them: The Orchard Keeper, Child of God, Suttree, Blood Meridian, the whole Border trilogy, The Road, and actually The Passenger and Stella Maris are all novels with the core theme of anti-progressivism. And I let Outer Dark and No Country for Old Men out, but there could be an argument for those too, honestly. And so what do I mean by that? In the Border trilogy, we have 2 characters in the 1940s in the first 2 novels who are going to Mexico to seek the old ways, what they can't find anymore in America. And McCarthy shows the dark side of trying to chase this dream because reality has changed. In The Orchard Keeper, it features Arthur Ownby, who is shooting the government tank because he is rejecting this new and progressive world. The start of the novel begins with some men cutting down a tree, and there is a iron rod in the tree and they can't cut through it. And that was obviously a metaphor to the technological and progressive virus entering nature forever. And this was the same thing at the end of Blood Meridian. McCarthy is talking about this new oncoming world and the end of the Wild West. In Child of God, Lester Ballard, he can't assimilate with the new world. Cornelius Suttree cannot assimilate into a modern, slowed down lifestyle. He's kind of a free spirit. And then in The Passenger and Stella Maris, McCarthy is making a massive critique of the government in general, showing how it is bureaucratic and weird and the problems with the Manhattan Project and how, our government has, created the ultimate evil with that. And so now I can just run you guys through some generalizations, put this on top. People get so mad when you do this, but I love doing this. McCarthy loves to hunt. He is a very avid fisherman. He loves driving old pickup trucks. He loves playing pool. He also really loves to golf. He said that if there were other writers like him, he would just spend all his time golfing instead of writing. All of those things you just heard, what type of political person usually does those things? And someone's going to be like, are you saying that liberals can't have dogs and drive trucks and play golf? I'm sure there's some out there, but 9 out of 10 aren't. And then when we add in everything I just said, I'm pretty sure that Cormac McCarthy was a conservative.